Show with John Impemba and James Grande.
What is going on, FANation? John Impemba here with James Grande. Welcome into the Fantasy Alarm NBA DFS Playbook Live show. We're looking at the Wednesday two-game main slate. We got the Emirates NBA Cup Tournament Day 2 going on here with the quarterfinals matchup. We got Atlanta versus New York. We got Golden State versus Houston here. Some pretty fun matchups to take advantage of. Ownership updated right before we went live. So if you're a member of Fantasy Alarm, you can go over there and check that out. I think the story of the day is where the chalk is going. You and I were just talking about that, right before we went live, and different ways to build your lineups. Last night was certainly an interesting day. We talked about, or I tweeted about getting passed by a 50 lineup train. You'll see those happen on short slates. We are not the only content provider out there. There are content providers that provide lineups, and people will copy those lineups, put them in, and away you go. So the goals today, to beat the lineup trains, to find the right places to pivot. Last night, Cole Anthony, 65% rostered, missed pretty much every shot he took. He had 7 fantasy points. For $100 more, you could have played Anthony Black and broken the slate at 5%. See if we can find those 5% plays here today. At least right now, there's one guy that's on your radar, James. Depending on the injury news that we're waiting on with the Atlanta Hawks, we're also fortunate, unlike last night, where the major injury news happens to be with the 7 p.m. game, right? Yes. The rosters had locked yesterday. We get the PJ Washington news. Najee Marshall breaks the slate. And basically, unless you planned on making that pivot, you didn't have any room to make the pivot to Najee Marshall in your lineup. So we will at least get the news on DeAndre Hunter, on Bogdan Bogdanovic, on Jalen Johnson for Atlanta early, and we can make our lineup decisions based on then. For Golden State, everybody's in, right? We're not really, Wiggins is good to go. We're still assuming nothing that we're really waiting on that game.
Houston, Şengün.
But he was present
went through a shoot around. Steven Adams is questionable. Van Vliet cleared. So the Houston side looks healthy-ish. And then Wiggins is they listing Wiggins questionable, but Steve Kerr said he expects him to be good to go. And then Moses Moody is out. So those are the I would say the only thing we're really waiting on the Golden State side is what they do with their lineup. Because if you remember, I mean, they haven't been able to figure it out. Last game, they finally went back to that small ball lineup where they're like, hey, we're going to play Kuminga and use Draymond off the bench. And then one game later, they're like, actually, Draymond, you're starting at the 5 tonight. And that was also without Wiggins. So Gary Payton and Buddy Hield started over Podziemski. What do they do tonight? Do they start Payton? Do they start Podziemski? Do they start Hield? So the most notable thing probably in that game is what Golden State does with their start. Do they start Looney and go back to their big lineup with Kuminga at the 3, right? So there's a lot to figure out with lineups in Golden State, but they're pretty much healthy, and Houston looks to be as whole as they've been. Tari Eason clearing the concussion protocol as well.
Yep. I do appreciate everybody who has tuned in. You want to hit that like button. It's a free way to support the work we do here over on the Fantasy Alarm YouTube channel. Same thing over on X. Hit that like, that share button. Certainly a nice support for us here. If you guys do want to become a member of the Fantasy Alarm family, you see we got the 7-day free trial still going on. You can go to fantasyalarm.com/win, and you can take advantage of that 7-day free trial. Pop that QR code up there. You can scan that as well. Get access to today's playbook written by James Grande. If you guys have questions in the chat, feel free to throw them in there. Albert popping in saying hello. Richard saying it was a good cash night last night, even with Anthony. Yes, it is easier to cash when the 65% owned guy tanks than when the 5% owned guy tanks.
And the cheap 65% owned guy.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So that certainly worked out. You and I, we were touting the Mo Wagner Bobby Poe play. Bobby Portis smashed. Wagner was looking like he was about to break the slate and had 2 second-half fantasy points, which was pretty sad there. But overall, a good night of cashing for me. Kevin saying he can't stand the lineup providers. Yeah, those are can be tough, but sometimes it's also great because if half the field is using one lineup and you're better than them, it gives you a pretty big advantage over there. So good to do. Kevin, we do have a Discord. You can find a link in the description of today's show. If that's not working, let me know. I can throw it into the chat for you as well. But we do have a free Discord channel, but we do have premium channels for our members where we do go more in depth with our DFS content. So definitely check out the 7-day free trial there. Where do you want to start? Obviously, we go team by team, game by game here with a shorter slate. We got Atlanta, New York, and the best matchup on the board in terms of game total. And nobody, in terms of ownership, is playing the Atlanta Hawks today. And that seems like a bit of a surprise because you and I like the Atlanta pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where we should start. So, like you said, Atlanta, New York, 236.5. That's down a point from where it opened. But like, okay, it's been bet down 1 point. 236.5 implied points is still 14 more points than the other game is implied. So this is still obviously the premier game. The Knicks are dominating ownership across the board. And I think the Knicks are relatively cheap. You get a team that plays basically 6-7 guys, 7.5 if you want to count like Cameron Payne as a half a player. So I get the appeal in the Knicks, but like let's not overlook the Hawks here. They have the second highest implied total. Yes, there's only 4 teams, but 115 implied points is a really nice number. The Knicks have the 18th ranked defense in the league, so it's not like they're whether you think highly of some of their perimeter defenders, haven't really proved to be good defenders this year specifically. So I do think the lower owned Atlanta makes a lot of sense. Trae Young obviously has a very high ceiling, has a pretty safe floor, even when he's not making shots, just given what the playmaking has been this year. It's been elite. We have seen a lot of big assist games out of Trae Young. And there's a guy who led the NBA in potential assists last year and is like has 3 more per game than he did last year. So Trae has an elite ceiling if you want to play him at lower ownership. Obviously, if anyone's listened to this show, you know that where Jalen Johnson stands here. He's been great. The shoulder is obviously a concern. Didn't play last game. We haven't really heard anything on Jalen Johnson. And that's like very par for the course when it comes to Quinn Snyder. He is very like close to the chest.
You'll find out when the inactives come out.
Yeah, I mean, he does not like give away stuff like, and I get it, but like he doesn't want the other team to know who's playing and who's not. So we'll probably know closer to lock about Jalen Johnson. I don't really have a lean either way, but when you don't play the game before, it seems like it's a real injury. So if Johnson's available, I think he is in play. If he's not, I think Dyson Daniels becomes a really, really nice tournament play. We've said this, and I've said this repeatedly on this show. Dyson Daniels has a very, very high ceiling when he scores because he is a very good intangible guy. And this is something that you and I talked about a lot last year. I played a low in Dyson Daniels last year when he was on the Pelicans and won a tournament because he is so good with the intangibles that when he scores, there's just these booms. And I think the sticker shock of 6,800 for Dyson Daniels is going to scare people away. But if guys are out for Atlanta, he's an elite tournament play. And I suspect the 5% ownership will move on him. But I don't know how much at 6,800. Right. So I still think if guys are out, Dyson Daniels is a really nice tournament play. Large field stuff only if they're fully healthy. Bogdanovich and Johnson play. Especially you have played endless amounts of DeAndre Hunter. Dude, he took 20 shots in 24 minutes.
That's what I'm saying. And like nobody was playing him with me. I'm like, can we get some DeAndre Hunter love here? The pricing is obviously coming up, right? He's 5,800 now. Yes. He's 5K. So, you are getting to a point where you need 30 fantasy points for that 5X, which we're generally looking for. Now, he's been scoring 20 actual in 4 straight games. Gotta love that. And as you said, he went out firing against Denver. I would assume a lot of that had to do with Jalen Johnson not being in the 20 shot attempts.
And Bogdanovich.
Right. And Bogdanovich being out there. So, but for years, I've been like the number one DeAndre Hunter guy going back to him being drafted 5 years ago, right? Like I've always thought that he's a super talented guy. I think there's a reason why he has outlasted a number of players that they have since taken and moved on from. RIP Cam Reddish, is actually, obviously over in
John Collins.
John Collins. They've kept, DeAndre Hunter around, and he's always kind of been when those knees can stay healthy for him, he's been a productive player. So I'm not shying away from DeAndre Hunter on the slate. And we talked about it when we get to the Knicks. The reason that nobody's really playing these like mid-tier Atlanta guys is because we know on the other side of this matchup, there's just 40 minutes locked in on guys around the same prices in that 6K range. Yes. So, 6,800 for Daniels or 5,800 for Hunter isn't going to make much sense when there's Josh Hart, when there's Mikal Bridges, when there's OG Anunoby playing more minutes on the other side of this matchup.
Do you think two things? One, do you want? I'm going to ask you a question first, and then I'm going to ask two questions. Sure. One, do you want DeAndre Hunter stats without Johnson Bogdanovic?
Sure.
Okay. Two, do you think the ownership's closer if both those guys are ruled out?
I think more people find themselves getting to Atlanta if those guys get ruled out. Yes, I would expect the Dyson Daniels ownership to increase. I know you said probably not a ton because of him being, $6,800, but I mean, you've also read off the numbers, and we're not the only ones that have those numbers, right? The 1.2 fantasy points per minute or whatever it is when those guys are off the floor. He becomes more interesting of a player at $6,800 if those two guys end up being ruled out again. But then Hunter, the same thing at 5,800. What we also tend to look at is people looking at ownership projections and whatnot. The natural pivot when someone gets ruled out is to go to the other guy. So no one's playing Hunter now, but if Jalen Johnson gets ruled out, they're like, ooh, well, for $3,000 less, I can go play DeAndre Hunter. Now look what I can build, right? And a lot of people go over there, and maybe you see a Steph Curry ownership go up now, or Fred VanVleet, who's already getting ownership. His numbers kind of pop up a little bit because now there's extra money to go around. So I think natural progression, if those guys get ruled out, go to the Atlanta side here a little bit, but that also wouldn't take me off of them either. No. I like DeAndre Hunter. I like Bogey if he's in tonight as well.
Yeah, so Hunter leads the team, John, in fantasy points per minute. No Johnson, no Bogdanovic, 1.23. Also has a 3.4% usage bump, 27% for DeAndre Hunter. Yeah. To the Dyson Daniels comment you made, he gets a 5% usage bump, only behind Kobe Buffkin, Keaton Wallace. So basically number one on the team for players that are going to play. 23% usage rate for Daniels, 1.2 fantasy points per minute. I mean, those are two legit samples for those two players. So, I think the minutes in that scenario where both those guys are out would I think Daniels' minutes could mirror the Knicks more, sure, while Hunter gets closer to 30, right? Because he did play 32 in that overtime game against the Lakers. So yeah, we did see that the Hawks are, because if you remember when he first came back, they stretched him to 30, and then they're like, oh, he's hurt again. So we don't do that. But it seems like they're more comfortable getting him up in that high 20s, low 30s. So if there's guys out, I do think Hunter, Daniels are elite pivots. You mentioned Bogdanovic. If he plays, he's great. And then it's just what do you do with the center room? I've told you before we hopped on air. I even wrote it up in the playbook today. I wrote Onyeka Okongwu up tonight as opposed to Capella. He's been the guy playing more lately outside of the Pelicans game. He's also been extremely efficient scoring fantasy points, and he is still over a fantasy point per minute. So if you are in a situation where you're just looking at Atlanta's center room and you're I want to play one of these guys to be different, I would just take the $1,000 savings on Okongwu over Capella.
Yeah, and we go through these stretches with Okongwu where he is probably the better overall player.
Yes,
but their rotation works for them, right? We've been begging for Capella to get traded so we can get this is this is the next center where we're can we just get full minutes for this guy, please? Just for our greedy fantasy needs, let's get 35 minutes going to Okongwu here. But they like the rotation; they'll play them 25 minutes each. Some days those 25 minutes will get you bigger pops because they just are unstoppable. The Charlotte game, he played 28, he had 35 fantasy points there. You'll get those, those games there near double doubles and whatnot because they're high output. He is the better offensive player. Capella is definitely more of your lob offensive rebound putback type guy. But the rebound numbers for him, dude, 17 in 24 minutes, 17 to 20, like those are insane numbers for a guy that's just on the floor for a limited amount of time. And listen, they're going to need bodies to throw at Towns tonight.
Yes,
Towns is going to take 25 shots. He's going to be super active all over for the floor tonight. Could lead to some foul trouble, could be some early switch rotations just to kind of throw different looks at them. The other thing you mentioned, obviously, is if Jalen Johnson gets ruled out, we could see Larry Nance be a guy that gets a minutes bump, played 24 minutes against Denver. Another generally high fantasy point per minute guy. You see the last 2 games where he was extended.
Every game.
Look at
all of them that he's been extended in this year.
The games that he's been extended in, he's been really good. 23 minutes, 31 fantasy points, 25 minutes, 24, 27, 31, 24, 30. So if we think he's going to play that 24, 25 minutes tonight, if Jalen Johnson ends up being ruled out, then, Larry Nance at 3,800 on a slate where, unlike yesterday, where there was a lot of value to play, there isn't really that today. There's a lot of mid-tier guys to play, but there's not value really to play. Larry Nance would probably quickly become a very popular option, I think, tonight if Jalen Johnson gets ruled out.
Yeah, I would venture to say one of the higher rostered players. I mean, even if
it'd be Kuminga, Larry Nance, 1-2 probably in terms of ownership today.
Yeah, Bridges probably still up there. Probably those 3. Yeah, I mean, even if you were in no extension in a blowout, he played 24. Even in a competitive game, if it was only 24 minutes, I think that's as much as you need for Larry Nance to be productive.
Yep.
And you know what? The Knicks did run some overlap with Precious and Towns last game, so we could see that as well, where Nance is extended a little bit more if the Knicks decide to go that direction.
Precious is kind of a hybrid player, right? He plays. I think power forward was his natural position coming out of college, and then they kind of just pivoted him to a small ball center.
What if Hart doesn't play? If Hart doesn't play, they might start Precious. Precious could start, right? Josh Hart's still kind of listed questionable, so they could, in theory, could they go McBride? They could, or could they go Precious? They could. I think those would probably be the natural moves for the Knicks, depending on what Atlanta has available to them.
Yeah, right? They benefit from having 3 guys that basically just play the same position.
Yes.
Play different positions. So
right.
So they could move Bridges or OG to the 4 and then slide everybody down and move Deuce in or go something else. If guys get ruled out tonight, would you play Ricochet at 43?
I wouldn't cross him off. I wouldn't cross him off. He we've seen him get really hot. Obviously, he had that one monster game earlier in the year where he just made every shot.
He's still shooting, right? 19 and 22 minutes, 11 shots, double-digit shot attempts is exactly what you want to see from a guy coming off the bench or starting in a limited role. Get in there and get your shots off.
Yeah, look, if they're shorthanded, he's already starting and playing low 20s. We saw it last game. There's a ceiling for him to approach 30. And if the shots are falling, well, Atlanta's they're not going to take off the number 1 pick in the last year's draft. So yeah, I mean, if guys are ruled out, Ricochet is definitely in our player pool.
Yep. Going over to the Knicks side of things, and again, we appreciate you all tuning in. Coach Chris popping in saying hit that like button. Definitely hit that like button if you're not already subscribed to the FANation YouTube channel. Free to do. The Prince again, a point off of the cash line yesterday, man.
It's sick.
I haven't seen somebody run this unlucky. Dude, I asked you if you're just photoshopping these at this point, because you are literally coming up a point
2
fractional points off cash lines for a week and a half now, it seems like. So we'll get you over there, my guy. It's got to come for you soon here. Again, Chris looking for the 50K tonight over on FanDuel, and Scott says he's ready to turn his luck around as well. So listen, here we go right here. Josh Hart. Oh, okay, still a game.
It's the Knicks news. I guarantee there's going to be a tweet somewhere. Yeah, here it is. Josh Hart will warm up with. It's the same Knicks stuff every time.
The intent to play,
dude. It's every time. Every Knicks player that's questionable, they're going to warm up, and we'll see. And every time they play. So we're currently in the. Josh Hart's playing until he's not, right? He's just playing.
Ooh. Non-basketball related news, but John Morosi, the Red Sox in Seattle are working towards a deal for a starting pitcher.
I saw. I did. I saw that. I hope it's George Kirby because he can't pitch in non-Seattle.
I hope it's what's gonna be unfortunate is when they deal like to way Tristan Casas and all these guys. I'm not ready to I'd rather sign a starter. Let's not build up all these prospects to trade them all away, and then you're like, oh, we have no lineup. We have no.
I heard there's a starter. I heard there's a starter available. Pretty good.
Yeah, go sign Corbin Burns.
So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Knicks, John.
Yeah.
7 currently projected 20% rostership or more on DraftKings tonight. 7. Let me ask you this. Of the 7 starters plus Payne plus McBride, of the 7, how many exceed 5x value tonight? 7 guys are 20% or higher tonight. 5x or better.
McBride.
Okay.
To answer Jim's question here today, yes.
Yes.
I would play for Knicks. I think McBride gets you over 20 fantasy points for 5x. Bridges has been hot. You need 30 out of Bridges to get 5x. He's been giving you that pretty consistently over the last 5 games. I mean, 50 from Towns.
50 from Towns. He's done it 2 games in a row, and he's done it like a bajillion times this year.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Brunson at 85. You need like 47.
No.
44.
Yeah, 44? You don't even need. Yeah.
42 and a half out of Brunson there. I don't think Brunson does it. I think Dyson Daniels locks down Brunson on this one.
Okay.
If I had to pick, I'd go McBride, Bridges, OG, and Towns.
So 4 of the 7.
Mm-hmm.
Who is the best Knicks play, in your opinion?
Probably Towns.
The Fields ownership jump on Mikal Bridges is not surprising to me.
No, I mean, at 6K, again, my thing is I'm playing him. We talked about this, we built the lineup. I definitely have Mikal Bridges in my lineup tonight. He is turning a corner, but he's not giving you 8x, right? He's giving you 5.5.
He's incredibly safe. I think he's one of the safest plays on the board because the minutes are unlike anyone else's on the slate. His minutes are better than everyone else's minutes.
Dude, he doesn't come off the floor when they're blowing team. They sub him back into games, and you and I are losing our mind, right? Why is Bridges still out there? No, I just subbed him back in. So 1,000% agree with you. He just he's just missed. This isn't a case where it's if he hits his shots. It's if he can just get us some other numbers, right? Because he's letting Towns get all the rebounds, right? So he's not really rebounding. Assists, Brunson's getting assists. He's getting a few. We're getting some defensive stats, but right now all we're getting is scoring. So we could just get some more other things. We could have a 45, fantasy point kind of game. It's one of the reasons why, again, I am playing him. But when we go to the Houston side of this game here, there are guys down here that we've seen go for 10x at their prices. Eason has popped off. Eamon Thompson for a little bit less. We've seen 50 fantasy points out of Eamon Thompson at the same positional eligibility, right? So we like Jonathan Kuminga. We'll talk about him, $5,400. So to me, Bridges is super safe. I don't think that there's a huge ceiling for him. But I also think you just plug him in your lineup. OG has given us ceiling games. We got the 48 here because he gives you blocks at a high number. He gives you steals at a high number. And we have seen him score big. I mean, the 40 actual game here. So, to me, I like the ceiling for OG. I'm playing them. I'm playing them both, right? So it's hard for me to pick and choose which one or the other. I think Bridges has a safer floor. We've seen a higher ceiling here for OG Anunoby.
Hawk Purdy comment, he's hurt. So
is he hurt?
we're not playing. Yeah. He has a sprain. He has a sprained ankle, I believe.
He's got no injury status on him, but
he's day-to-day with a sprained ankle per Tom Thibodeau 3 minutes ago.
There you go. Gotta get the tweets.
3 minutes ago. So no Hawk Purdy.
Precious if you wanted to like really punt a. I think he just gets his minutes, right? We talked about this. Like campaigns kind of knocked down now, right? They go McBride and then they go Precious as their backup big. And because Bridges and because OG can play the guard spots, like they don't have a need to play Payne the 20 minutes a night.
They have 7.5 players. They're going to play 7.5. That's why like anything else is just kind of moot. Like 20% of the field is getting to campaign. I'm not saying I don't see the path. He's been over a fantasy point per minute. He really doesn't need like a massive amount of time to get there. But like also we saw it last game in competitive setting, he played 13 minutes with Precious back. So to your point, like some of those extra minutes go to McBride, some of those extra minutes go to Precious now, and Payne's just squeezed to like half a player. So you can get there if like you really need value, and if like the Nance news doesn't break in your favor and you need a punt. Campaign's probably the best punt on the board. Maybe Precious you could throw in that.
Campaign's floor is so low right now.
It is. But like that's just there's 20% of the field playing it. So
I'm not. Listen, last night 20% of the field played Tristan Da Silva, and you're like, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for taking yourself out of lineup contention tonight. I will let the 20% of the field play campaign tonight.
Agreed.
I will play something else. So.
I only thing that I want to talk about more with the Knicks. I don't disagree on the Daniels front. I think the price for Jalen Brunson is really good for his ceiling. And in a 2-game slate, we do talk ceilings. Like if he has a ceiling, Brunson, if he has the Detroit game, you're in a driver's seat with Brunson. And I do think you and I had spoken on this last night on the show. We were dead on with our, prediction that Josh Hart would be the lowest owned of the Knicks. Like he is just simply lower owned than all of them. I mean, he is the 6th highest rostered Knick of the day. And I completely understand it.
I just wish he was 6K too with the rest of them. Like why?
Yes, but to that point, like
why he's not, but like I just wish he was.
Do we have like realistic, right? Will OG Anunoby have a chance to have a triple-double tonight?
No.
Will Mikal Bridges have that opportunity?
Definitely not.
Josh Hart amongst the group is their nightly triple-double threat, right?
2 of them. Yeah, 2 of them already.
And when they both came? In the Emirates NBA Cup this year. Yeah, so
Philly.
So I'm just saying, like, I think that there's something to be said when you're talking about, he only played 32 minutes in Charlotte. Clearly there was an ankle ailment or in Toronto.
Yeah.
Josh Hart plays 40 minutes in competitive games where he's not spraining his ankle in the middle of it.
Yep.
If he's cleared to play, he's going to play, and we're going to get 40 minutes out of Hart. And I just think at low ownership, you're looking for leverage. There's no reason that I think like OG Anunoby is 20% better than like Josh Hart. There's a 17 to 18% difference in ownership between him and Josh Hart, right? So
I agree. And we talk about this like again, not to age us, but we've been doing this for a very long time. We've always talked Josh Hart being like that tournament winning type of guy here that fills up your stat sheet. And on the nights where like he does shoot or at least hit all of his shots, you get 50, you get 44, 40. Had this run here of 49, 43, 43. Like, you talk ceilings, like he's on the ceilings level with OG, but he's actually getting those boom games a bit more consistently than OG Anunoby, because obviously what OG likes up for the lack of assists, he's getting in blocks and steals. I agree. And we talked about it last night. Our ownership projection models, it's very difficult to project ownership on 2-game slates. Yes. When we were looking at it last night, we were like, oh, Luka's the highest roster top guy. I am playing Giannis. I am playing SGA. It ended up flipping. Luka was the lowest rostered player. thankfully we still stuck with, or at least I still stuck with what I was doing because Luka ended up bottoming out there.
Yep.
But if you end up, if Josh Hart continues to be a low rostered play tonight, like Bobby Portis was, obviously a little bit more expensive, but you get 45 fantasy points out of him, you're almost guaranteeing yourself being in the money at that point.
Yep.
So I'm with you there. Will Daniels be on Brunson?
Yes,
yeah,
for 100%.
100% going to be there. Power saying Cam not going to see more than 6 minutes. I mean, it's in the ballpark. Certainly, there's a
range of outcome. Yeah, range of outcome
for sure that he doesn't get double-digit minutes. Which is why, again, if 20% of the field is playing that, I will allow those guys to take that into their lineups. I'm also playing a single entry. Sometimes that changes a little bit here.
Yep.
Let's see. And then Jim, Van Vliet, Bronson, and Towns, Kuminga, one lineup for DraftKings. Yeah,
that's good. Good base.
That's definitely fine. It all depends on what your value is going to be tonight, Jim. So let's shoot us your lineup, and we'll kind of let you out there. All right, Golden State, Houston side. Again, this is the game that's expected to be a bit more competitive and low scoring. Nobody's playing Golden State players tonight, except for Jonathan Kuminga. Actually, Jonathan Kuminga is the highest rostered player on the slate, but nobody else is touching anybody else on here. I think the uncertainty of their starting lineup has a little bit to do with that as well. If we knew for sure of the five who were playing, we can count on Wiggins, we can count on Draymond Green, we can count on Curry. That's almost it, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not even guaranteed Jonathan Kuminga minutes or starting minutes, which would be hilarious.
Not until the lineup card is I know they don't hand in lineup. Not until it's physically on a screen somewhere, or he's on the floor.
Jonathan Kuminga will not be starting, and people will be pivoting to like Tari Eason and Jabari Smith or something like that tonight, right? Like just because they won't trust Kerr, they just won't trust Kerr to play him.
19 minutes incoming,
yeah, exactly. But talk to me here. How do you feel about Curry? How do you feel about Draymond Green, Wiggins, Kuminga, and those crew?
I mean, it's like you said, the first game has 236 and a half implied points. This game has 222 and a half. That's not terrible.
No.
But there's a clear difference when you're talking about two of the four best teams in defense. Golden State's number 4, Houston's number 2. In terms of defensive ratings, I'm good with Golden State. They're a great tournament team, but like you said, I mean, there's nothing you said was incorrect. It's just hard to get to them. Curry gets extended in these important games, right? So I think you can safely project Steph Curry's minutes in the mid-30s tonight, 33, 34, 35. I think those are fine. Draymond, we saw him re-enter the starting lineup a game after they said they want to bring him off the bench. Is that going to be what happens here, or do they start him? I suspect he's starting tonight. In that situation, I'm fine with it. He obviously gives up a lot of sides to Şengün, who's really good in the post. So that could obviously be a problem, and maybe why they would go a Kevon Looney route. I think Wiggins is fine. He's over a fantasy point per minute. I think his price offers no wiggle room at all at $6,600. So it's really hard to get to Wiggins. But if you wanted like a pivot off of Kuminga just to be different, because the whole field's playing Kuminga, that Wiggins is obviously
Wiggins has been really good at times this year, right?
He's also just hasn't been this price like with Steph Curry in the lineup. Like in that Houston game, I think there was no Curry, no Draymond in that game. So like, you see him at an elevated price tag, but you're like, okay, I can make a case for getting there because people are out. But with Curry and Draymond back, I think it hurts him a little bit. And I guess
he went for 40 plus in both of these two games where Steph Curry also played, did Wiggins. So like I 1,000% hear what you're saying. Steph Curry obviously being a usage rate machine here. And then if they do add in Kuminga playing a bunch of minutes, like could also just kind of throw off. Kuminga played 15 and 20 minutes in those two games. If Kuminga's up here playing 30, taking the shots that he's taking, those obviously would go away from probably Wiggins in those spots.
Yeah, and I had looked at it earlier, just like that lineup, the lineup that included Curry Kuminga, and he was under a fantasy point per minute. For the year, he's over a fantasy point per minute. So like, just naturally, you're dealing with two ball hungry players in
Yeah.
Kuminga and Curry. But Wiggins is obviously, a large field tournament play. I don't know what to do with the rest of the team. I think Kevon Looney is safe if you get there. He is the one warrior that I'm like fine getting to that is cheap. The minutes have been pretty secure. He's clearly ahead of TJD at this point. 21 plus minutes in 4 straight games. Did play the 27 against Houston, and I don't think that's a coincidence. As we mentioned, like Şengün is great in the post. Using a bigger body against Şengün makes a lot of sense than just letting him either shoot over you or pass over you. If they had Draymond, because Şengün's also an elite, as good a scorer he is, he's an elite passer as well. So there's a case for Looney to start at 4K. He would be one of the best values of the day, if not the best value of the day. He's 1.2 fantasy points per minute this year.
There's a reason why we kind of laugh at Kevin Looney and how there's a reason he's been around with this team for as long as he's been, right? Yes. Like, and whether they're starting him or putting him on the bench, like he just accepts what his role is, and when they put him on the floor, he is productive. So his rebound line tonight, by the way, set at 7.5.
Dude, I think there's I think there's an outside chance we get the Kevon Looney starting lineup later. We'll see. I think the only other
7.5 is a great number for rebounds.
Yes, that is a great number. I would say the only other player, like even if Podziemski started, I'd have a hard time getting there. I would say if Buddy Hield is in the starting lineup, I would contemplate it at 4,500. He obviously hadn't been shooting well until he did like kind of explode. And this is kind of what we were getting earlier, Buddy, right? Where he was making all the shots, and every game that he was playing in, he was being extended because he was making all the shots, and the Warriors just need offense. So, if Buddy starts and comes out and hits a bunch of shots, 4,500, I'd have interest there. And right on the cue, Brooks or Hield, I think that's an interesting talking point because Dillon Brooks is going to be popular, like it or not. He's going to get a lot of ownership tonight.
I mean, I think this is a great spot to kind of like play your lineup building where you maybe plug in Buddy Hield because he's $100 more expensive than Dillon Brooks. And then if he's not starting, but Dillon Brooks is, you just make that pivot and play Dillon Brooks. So this is one of those spots where you can kind of set up your lineup to include both or the option to play both plays there and just kind of pivot down. Oh, they took out their. So you'd have to play him in the util. I thought that Brooks had shooting guard eligibility.
No, just this year, just small forward this year.
All right, so you'll have to stick him in your util and make that pivot if that's the way you want to go here. If you can't do that, I'd play Dillon Brooks over Buddy Hield because there's more guaranteed minutes going Brooks's way there.
And there's not a lot of ownership discrepancy either. They're like both about the same.
Which again feels like interesting because like there's a chance that Buddy Hield plays 18 minutes tonight and goes 1 for 6. Right? Like there's no. This is definitely an interesting ownership slate. You could have a lot of
the update for Buddy Hield is actually way different. He is really popular.
Yeah, it's 40% is what it says. We'll see.
That number is definitely it definitely says it starts with a 4 and it had not started with a 4 the whole day. So that's a little bit interesting.
They got him for 28 minutes. So that would suggest starting.
I also in the playbook you guys can find on fantasyalarm.com. So I projected lineups today, John, just like in the write-up. Little sneak peek. I did include Buddy Hield in a small ball lineup: Curry, Hield, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond. But we've talked about it, right? There are many different directions they could go, including big lineup with Looney. They can go Gary Payton, who was great in his spot start last game. So Podziemski has been starting. So there's many different directions they could go. I personally think it's Hield, but it's just impossible to know.
I agree. All right, looking at this Houston side. We're waiting on Şengün news. Şengün's obviously went through workout. Where does Şengün rank for you among top spends today?
I mean, he's up there. He's super talented. Triple double threat hasn't been great the last 2 games. One of them included that Golden State game. Only played 29 minutes. Wasn't great. Jabari played all the minutes off the bench. Or Jabari played all the minutes instead. He obviously has a massive ceiling. Where does he rank? I'd probably have him where he's slotted in price-wise. He's probably 4th for
me. Okay. Then you got Van Vliet, you got Jalen Green, Amen, Jabari, Eason, Brooks, kind of the crew that you would consider playing here tonight. We talked ceilings with Eason and Amen Thompson. Went for 40 and 25 minutes. We've seen that happen quite a few times this year. A guy that does not need a lot of minutes to do a lot of damage. 22 minutes against Portland, 39, 23 minutes against the Pacers, 36 here. 53 fantasy points against Golden State in 35 minutes. So we've even seen him do it in this very matchup here before when given extended run. So I think for me, playing Eason and Amen Thompson are certainly pretty interesting tournament plays. Because again, these are also guys that have insane minutes ranges, right? Like now they're becoming a bit more stabilized, but you can have anywhere from 22 to 35 minutes, it seems like, for both of these guys.
Yeah, it's very hard to project. And so like you can't really play them, I think, in anything other than tournaments. Like I feel better about Tari only because he's 5,200. But I mean, look, Eason has a crazy high ceiling. He had his best game of the year against Golden State earlier in the year. So he's a havoc causer. He's mayhem, and him and Amen Thompson, like, together, that's what they are. So yeah, I mean, they're actually lower owned than I thought they would be, especially Eason at 52. But people probably scared off a little bit by the concussion. Yeah, I have no qualms if you get to Eason, no qualms if you get to Thompson. I think the most interesting part, in just looking at some of the ownership, Van Vliet's ownership has kind of fallen off a little bit. He was the highest projected Houston guy earlier. Now Şengün, Jalen Green, Jabari, and Brooks, he's the 5th highest rostered. And I even wrote up in the playbook, I was kind of thinking about leverage on Green over Van Vliet tonight. Just, you take a guy with a 28% usage, and if he goes off on a 2-game slate, well, there's your leverage. But now I kind of feel the other way. If ownership holds and Van Vliet's the guy that's lower owned than Jalen Green, well, then I'll just pay extra dollars for Van Vliet. And to your point that you made before we hopped on air, Van Vliet's minutes are secure. Like, if he's playing, his 37, 38 minutes are secure, where Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, if they're not playing well, those are the first 2 that are liable to get benched. So, and now I guess Şengün add Şengün to that mix too. So, I kind of like Van Vliet 73 out of like the rest of them. Jalen in tournaments, Jabari, the price is obviously for the ceiling is great, but when do you get that ceiling game? You never know with Jabari Smith.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I think Dylan Brooks, as long as he can stay out of foul trouble, he's perfectly fine.
Yep, I agree. Anybody else here that you're looking to kind of build some core lineups around?
I don't think so. I mean, if there's like, if Steven Adams were to sit, you could punt Landale, who's going to play backup center minutes.
Okay.
3K, but is that like really getting you excited? Yeah. I mean, we don't even know if it so happened that Şengün, Adams were both ruled out. We're not even sure Landale would start. Like, he would clearly play, but we don't even know sure they could just start Jabari, Eason, or Jabari, Amen Thompson, like whatever.
We had this conversation, right, too. It was like, all right, so if Şengün was to not play, which again seems like he's trending like he will, would they go Steven Adams as a starting center tonight, or would they just move Jabari over to starting and play like Amen Thompson, Tari Eason, and Steven Adams still plays his 15 minutes, assuming he was in. So Power saying he likes Hield more because he'll be looking to focus on shooting, while Brooks would be looking to stop Steph. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that last night as well. Will Dylan Brooks stay in this game? Right? Like, will he and Draymond get double ejected at some point in this one? Like anything is certainly possible there. All right, let's get a lineup build going here. We both have, I think we kind of know where we want to go with some of these plays here. But where do you want to kick things off?
Probably like Bridges, Kuminga, McBride. Probably like three of the first names that I would
go McBride, Bridges, and Kuminga.
And obviously, McBride and McBridges have like great flexibility if we wanted to move.
Sure. I'm kind of buying into the Josh Hart low roster play here. If we did you think Looney starts? What do we get? Like Kuminga, Looney, Hart, Bridges, McBride. That's $7,800 a player.
If you switch Looney to util and played Towns, and we also played Looney, we still have a ton of money.
You have a ton of money. Let's see here.
And again, we could always move if we needed to. Bridges is forward flexible as well.
It's true. We did Trey. That would give us a $4,300 forward or guard, I guess, as you mentioned, because Bridges can play both, a shooting guard.
We were 100 off Brooks.
100 off Brooks there. Let's see. You mentioned, did you have a preference of Brunson versus VanVleet?
I wouldn't say I have a preference. I think Brunson probably has a higher ceiling.
Okay. That gives us 5 Knicks, which we're still fine playing with. Do you like 5 Knicks and Neeson here? So, no Atlanta. How do we feel about that?
I mean, Atlanta's not getting ownership, so it's not like this is a contrarian perspective on the game. I'm somewhat indifferent about not having Atlanta. They do have the second highest, 114 applied points. It's a lot of points, and plus, we don't know who's in and who's out. So if Atlanta comes out and we have news, obviously our lineup's going to shift, right?
Like Jalen Johnson. I don't know.
Even if we didn't go all the way up, you could play Hunter there, or you could play.
There really isn't another value play, I guess, is the other problem too, right?
That is probably honestly, that combination is probably Brooks Hield. But
yeah,
Jabari at the forward or util.
We're just so close. We're $100 off getting.
Yeah, I mean that's why everyone's playing OG Anunoby, because that's why.
And not playing Josh Hart, right? Because they're looking at the way the lineups are being built.
Yep, that's exactly why everyone's in this range. I mean that lineup right there is it's a good lineup. The chalkiest thing you could do is going from Looney to Hield, and then you're just sitting in the chalkiest line of the night, basically minus
Trey, where no one's playing, right? So, so again, it's a 2-game slate, guys. I would suggest again having fun with it, playing somewhat light, and understanding that there's gonna be some high concentrated ownership. We'll have that again updated over on Fantasy Alarm, and again, if we're gonna get 20% of the field playing, a campaign, if we're gonna be getting 20% of the field. Plugging in, or 10% of the field, we have playing Kyle Anderson tonight. Lindy Waters is getting 20% ownership tonight. There's definitely a chance that some of those guys to just completely bottom out and give yourself some advantage, even if you do play a bit of a chalkier lineup here. So, regular size slate tomorrow, right?
Nope. 3 games.
Back to 3 games. Okay. 3 games instead of 2 tomorrow. So we'll have that for you all. Preview show, live show, back again here at 5 p.m. Eastern time. We appreciate everyone who has tuned in today again, and we'll be back tomorrow. Good luck tonight. We'll catch you later.